Okay, so we're starting the roundtable. We're starting the roundtable series every second month. The team that is preparing these roundtable sessions are Annie, Dr. Art Murray, Dr. Annie Green, Dr. Vincent Ribier, and myself, Dr. Moria Levy. Whoever wants to help us, just by being part of this team. Please, let's mute everyone. So whoever wants to help us by being part of this team or taking a role as an expert in one of the specific meetings of one of the specific sessions, please write me here or on email, and we will be more than happy because we believe in the wisdom of all our KMers. Before I turn to Annie and let her lead this fascinating session that I'm really waiting for on generative AI, I want to share my screen for one moment and show you what will be the topic of our next roundtable, because our next roundtable will be on blockchain, NFT, and knowledge management. And we're going to ask ourselves if we are all aboard on this blockchain NFT KM Express rail, and where will the journey take us? And not only where will it take us, but are we ready for this journey? So we already have 4 experts and a leader, Dr. Weiss, Sheikh, and we will be all waiting for you. And very shortly on the KMGN LinkedIn page and on our community page on WhatsApp, we will send all registration details so you can register. So for now, save the date, May the 25th, 1 p.m., just like now, UTC, of course. So in every time zone, it's a different hour. That will be next time. And now from this time, Annie, the stage is yours. Annie, you are muted. If you can please unmute yourself, I think it would be easier for us to understand.
Of course not, no. I want to thank everyone for coming to this discussion. I think this is going to be a very good discussion that'll help hopefully move us forward in thinking about knowledge around generative AI. I have here today a panel of 4 people that are going to be answering some questions, and hopefully we can open up the questions so that you can put things in the chat. How I'd like to start this out, I'm Annie Green, and I'm going to be facilitating this for the Knowledge Management Global Network. The way I would like to start out is to at least give each person an opportunity to introduce themselves and just say a couple of words about themselves. I am Annie Green. I am facilitating for the Knowledge Management Global Network out of Alexandria, Virginia in the United States. I've been working in knowledge management and digital transformation for quite some years. I've been around speaking. One of the things that I want to put out there before I actually go to our panelists or participants is that, did we miss the boat, or did we miss the knowledge boat, so to speak? We all of a sudden have this new shiny thing that everybody's abuzz about, but perhaps it started back in 1960 with Eliza, and we just somehow or another didn't follow the trail of chatbots until we got here, where it presented something that would make life, I guess, easier for us. And now we're wondering just how this fits in. So that's one of the things that I want to put out there to start seeding the conversation. And, we'll be talking about a few questions, but then we hope we'll generate your discussions and we'll actually get a lively conversation. Why don't we start with Darren? Darren, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much, Annie. My privilege and honor to be here. I'm Darren Harbert. I work at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University in the Educational Development Center, and I lead the e-learning team here. So I'm a digital learning support senior manager. I've been working in technology enhanced learning for about 15 years. I love Annie's comment about, did we miss it? It certainly snuck up on us, the AI revolution, and then all of a sudden it was here. And I guess my first excitement came with the generative AI art that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, and then with GPT tools recently. So that's been my immersion into generative AI very recently. So very nice to meet you all.
Okay. And Adam?
Hello, Annie and everyone. I'm also working at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. I'm in the English Language Centre. I'm a senior teaching fellow at the Language Centre. I'm responsible for all the credit-bearing subjects that the centre delivers. Yes, your comment about did it sneak up on us? I've been playing around. I think play is the right word here with technology for many years, and in a sense, I've been waiting for this moment where technology actually does what we want it to do. For so often, like we've been having technology, but it's been so difficult to use it. We've gone back to using pen and paper, or it's been difficult to use. Hasn't done what we wanted, and now suddenly we've got this interface where it works very easily for everybody. So it's exciting, but it's a challenge as well. Exciting and a challenge. I welcome it, but it is a challenge. Yes. Thank you.
Annie?
He's unmuting you.
Tony? Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Annie, for inviting me to be part of the panel. I wouldn't have missed this session even if I wasn't part of the panel. There's some exciting stuff going on. And yeah, your comment about sneaking up on us, it's been there creeping in the background, and then all of a sudden, boom, excitement happens. But a little bit about me. I've been in IT for over 30 years. Spent a lot of my time early on in the AI world, and then moved into knowledge management. And then about, I don't know, about 7, 8 years ago, looked at how KM and AI was coming together and blending. And it's all about delivering of knowledge, right? At the end of the day, AI is about having machines enable us to make better decisions and delivering that knowledge to be effective. So I mean, it was a natural synergy between the two. I've been very fortunate to write a few books, contribute chapters and a few others all around the KM space, and now I'm venturing more into the AI and writing some things in that nature. I'm a consultant. I run a small consulting practice based in Chicago. I'm currently outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in the U.S. And so and like I said, I'm very excited to be here. And let's get it going.
Very good. I'm gonna pronounce your name. If I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, please correct it. Okay.
Yeah. No, I think, hi, everybody. My name is Omkar. The best way to pronounce my name is the first 2 letters, Om, right? Every time you say it, you meditate. So my background is that I'm an organizational psychologist by training, and most of my research was in the domain of employee knowledge sharing networks. And it gradually went on for me to build a tech startup in the domain of knowledge management. And here's my entire approach towards generative AI and knowledge management. We were selling something very similar to what ChatGPT offers, but within the knowledge management space for the last 6 to 9 months. And now when we are pitching to our new customers, they're coming across like, is this like ChatGPT? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what the narrative was for the last 6 months. So whenever I think of this concept, I always, it reminds me of, I'm a big foodie, so I always give food analogies about avocado toast, right? It has been there for the longest time, but suddenly 5 years before, everybody started pumping, oh, avocado toast is the next big thing, but it was always there. So just because it has gotten a lot of showcase and light and virality, I think it's taking everybody by a storm. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this first question out there. And it's about, is it a new technology, and why do we have all of this hype? What's happening? I mean, did we not realize that chatbots are the evolution into Chat GPT, and did we not realize that all of them are under a category of generative AI, and we're trying to recreate them? And also we're doing a branding thing again, which is something that we say in knowledge management we need to be cognizant of. We are actually branding generative generative AI as Chat GPT. So how did we kind of miss this? Is it really a new technology, or was Siri and GPT and Alexa just predecessors that didn't matter? So I throw that out there, and then to the panel, someone jump in and kind of discuss that for a second.
I'll jump in. I mean, from the Chat GPT perspective, right? So we've been interacting with Siri and Alexa and Google Home for years, right? I think this is pretty much an evolution. I mean, these technologies have been evolving over the last several years. Like Omkar was mentioning, and I think it's an evolution of these technologies, and it's the blending. I've talked earlier when I say about KM and AI coming together, that the technologies and processes and aspects of both disciplines are starting to merge and deliver knowledge where we need it, how and how we need to use it. But with the evolution of the Chat GPT and generative AI, now it becomes, embedded in our daily lives, and one, it can add productivity, and two, it can cause issues. So I think it's an evolution and a blending of technologies that's happening here. And like you said, Annie, I think it's a bit of rebranding and marketing as well, because I hear from my own family that's not really into tech as much, and what they hear is that Chat GPT can do everything for you, and write papers and do all this stuff. And I have to kind of taper that enthusiasm or that fear about what it is and where I think it's going. But at the end of the day, it's all about how we, in my mind anyway, how we deliver knowledge and the efficiency and effectiveness of doing that. And so I think it's an evolution of the science, and it's been here, but just evolving. And I think someone said earlier, it's the Chat GPT user interface is key to the usability of the product and of what it presents. And if the UI was not as easy to use, people wouldn't latch onto it. So user interfaces are super important, how we leverage these tools.
Can I, Annie, jump in?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think that I want to look at it differently, because you are speaking in technology perspective, and you are absolutely correct when you're saying evolution only. But I learned from my colleagues, the KM Russia guys, specifically Vadim and Olga, that when you speak about positioning, it's not what actually happens, but what's the perception of the people. And I'm looking at the perception, and I am speaking about a revolution. Because before there was ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, it was one thing. When they came in is another thing. And I will tell you that when I show it and demonstrate it to people, after 10 minutes of demonstration, it's even something totally different, because they can't catch in their minds until I show them that on their daily routine jobs, ChatGPT changed the rules of the game. So therefore, it may be an evolutionary technology, but it's a revolution in knowledge management, the way we understand what we can do and will do. Back to you.
Okay. Very good. Darren or Omar?
Yeah, very much an evolution. I think it's an evolution. It's the development of the killer app. Yes, we had Siri. Yes, we had Alexa, but they couldn't do what ChatGPT can do. I think it's also a breakthrough that's happened as well. So my understanding of what you need for AI is the combination of the models, the data, and the computing power. And from my knowledge, it's been the jump in the complexity of the model, or the tasks that the model can do. So the large language model, I understand it's from Google originally, the transformer. The idea that this maybe not revolutionary, maybe evolutionary, but the big jump has come via the quality of the model. And so from that model, we got ChatGPT, the killer app, as you say, a great interface. Omkar's been presenting something similar for a while. The interface was there, right place at the right time. People latched onto it. I heard people say at the beginning, oh no, it's just a plagiarism tool. It's just producing what it's got in its database, but it's clearly more than that. It's not replicating what's in its database. The language model, the large language model that it implements enables it to create from what it's learned for sure, but actually create. So I think Anthony is right when he talks about the evolution of the technology. I think the revolution has come, as Moira said, from the killer application, which has been ChatGPT and the way that we interact with ChatGPT, as Adam has said, from the interface. And I think this comes from the development of the model, which has enabled us to finally get to get generative AI that looks like it's actually generating. As I say, it's producing something that's greater than what's in its database.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of throw something else out there, and Adam, I'm gonna see if we can get your views on this, because we're saying evolution, we're saying revolution, we're saying that, you know, we've reached certain points, which we have, because this has actually been existing for a while, and that's why I wonder how we missed it, because the computers or the technology we had didn't have the capacity, and now it kind of has the capacity. And I think one of the reasons that GPT is leading is because it has and this is just to give an example, 175 billion points, and BERT, which is one of the next one, has only 345 million. So you see the big jump there. What exactly are we expecting from generative AI? Are we trying to lump it all into one and say it'll make things faster? Or are we actually trying to identify the purpose for it and how it can fit into specific areas within our business? So I want to put that out there. What exactly is this? Because we keep saying generative AI, we keep saying GPT. What context is that in? And what do we mean by the value it brings? There's so many. So Adam, I'm gonna throw that over to you.
Sorry, Tony, you want to come in?
You go ahead.
I think we're still searching for what it can do, and we're still trying to we're still finding out what it can do. Like, I can tell you about, like, even last year I was experimenting with chatbots, and chatbots in education, but even in airlines, in business, they're often a very frustrating experience because they're very limited in their capabilities. Chatbots I'm talking about from last year. And then and that was partly because to build a chatbot, you have to give it the data, you have to feed it the answers, the data, and then it can work from those answers. But ChatGPT has been able to revolutionize that process. So I guess one way we're going to look at is in the customer service model, how companies deal with customers. Chatbot is often a very frustrating experience, or was a frustrating experience, but being able to use GPT technologies in chatbots will revolutionize that, I think, and how companies, of all types of companies, interact with their customers. I think that would be one way forward, yes.
Okay.
Just to add on to that, right? Like whenever we are building such technologies or trying to contextualize, you know, the large language models of ChatGPT 4 as we speak into contextual outputs, one thing what we realized where, you know, ChatGPT is still, or generative AI is still going to take some time, is in collection of the tribal or the tacit knowledge of the organization. I think as of now, as of March 2023, I think the generative AI model is super well equipped to you know, understand explicit knowledge within the boundaries of the organization, within the infosec of the organization. And we have seen some brilliant cases, as Adam said, that, you know, how customer facing teams or service desk teams now don't have to rely on a lot of searching and just go ahead and ask a question to an internal bot and able to get really quick answers, rather than, you know, wasting time trying to find where the answer is, or even worse, who has the answer. And this has actually resulted in some stellar business outcomes, right? Like their first query resolutions have gone up. The average handling time what a service desk takes has just reduced, because a generative AI might take maximum 4 to 5 seconds to create. And every time there's a valid answer, the large language model actually ends up learning that, hey, this is the correct answer, so let's start suggesting these aspects more.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, so there's a Pandora's box and open up here on one level, but I think how the tool is being integrated from a productivity standpoint within the ecosystem of an organization is the important piece, because it's dealing with a finite level of explicit knowledge and being able to render decisions, because it works in two ways. One, from a predictive analytic perspective, and two, from a reinforcement algorithm perspective. So it goes through those predictions, all of the information. And I think Stephanie put a question out there about how it, pretty much can give you disinformation, because it's only learning based on how it's been trained and what's being used in its decisions. But the reinforcement learning comes back when it comes back with an answer and you say, well, no, this is not right, and this is the real answer. So it starts to learn. But dealing with a finite area within your organization, it gives it those boundaries, right? Like Amkar was saying, it gives it those boundaries, so it allows it to answer and respond based on the collective explicit knowledge within your organization. So it's if you look at Microsoft's investment in OpenAI, right? 10 years ago or so, and how now Microsoft has got to a point where now they can embed the API within the tools of the Microsoft ecosystem, Word, Excel, Teams, and the things that it can do from that perspective. Like if we have this meeting now, in the background, it could be taking notes. If I say, Annie, I need to send you this brief after the meeting, well, you know what? ChatGPT can send the brief to Annie during the meeting. I mean, these are productivity things that can happen within the use of these tools, and it's very centered on the organization, how the organization has their knowledge, and the better knowledge management aspects of that organization, the better the chat GPT and the APIs that surround the ecosystem of delivering that productivity will be able to respond. So I think it's going to be beneficial within the organizations more so than in the broader public, because like Stephanie brought up in her question, it has a lot of misinformation. It has a lot of potential for bias. I mean, it's a bunch of other things in this rabbit hole it can go down that we still have to address.
I think it's a very interesting point you make there, Anthony, about it learning. And I think the fact that GPT is based on a model, and as you say, it has a finite amount of knowledge. So when you're using Poe, for example, at the moment to access GPT-4, the bot says, I don't know anything after, and it gives the cutoff date, whenever that was. And I think it was interesting to watch the way that when it was given more agency, how it did go down the negative routes that we've seen from so many other chatbots that were released and had to be taken offline. So during the Bing experiment recently, where it was allowed to go off topic, off script, where it was kind of released, it wasn't aware, it didn't know what it didn't know. And I'm sure we've all read the very entertaining transcripts where it started arguing with people and basically arguing 2 + 2 = 5, and it wasn't aware of what it didn't know. So I think there's a bit of a paradox and a problem there. I don't know how that can be solved. The fact that you want it to develop, you want it to work with a greater knowledge set, but once that starts happening, you run the risk of even perhaps more information that Stephanie was referring to before. I noticed that ChatGPT itself is going to be accessing plugins. So the fact that it will be able to access the internet. So as we know, it doesn't access the internet to scrape an answer when you ask it a question. Right. But there are plugins that are developed along the lines of shopping plugins or airplane timetable plugins and things like that, so that with a very controlled way, it will reach out to the internet, but not generally reach out to teach itself. It will use plugins to access the internet. So yeah, sorry, I was just responding there. I think it's fascinating what you said about it learning and bettering itself, or not.
Absolutely. we're gonna segue to another question, because there in the chat it does. I mean, where everyone's saying, well, it lies. It doesn't tell the truth, and we've talked about that a little bit. But then after that, I want to go to Dora, who's going to explain why he thinks it is headed from an evolution to a revolution. But there are significant concerns, and those concerns are valid with people who have to use it. That's why we're seeing now it lies. It doesn't tell the truth. There are problems. I know that I've seen where it doesn't bring back stuff, but it's not necessarily the tool. It's that we have to know the sources and we have to be able to vet it. So there are things like, the quality of the results that are compromised, increase in potential for new kinds of plagiarism, ineffective and inefficient algorithms. If you don't have the skill to write those algorithms, then we're going to have some problems. And here's a big one: lack of human editing. We need the human to augment it, to verify. Even when we do research, we've got to have authoritative sources there. And these things are not happening. So you all have been going around talking about that. And I want to give one last word on that. How do we stop straddling the fence to feel that it's such a great tool, but then also to realize that it has its concerns and we need to address these concerns in order to elevate the confidence that people have in this. So
I come in here from an educational perspective. Like initially, a lot of teachers are afraid of ChatGPT. They see like plagiarism, a problem of plagiarism. They see it as a threat. But going forward, we are certainly thinking how we can integrate GPT into our subjects, and actually the fact that it tells lies or it gives misinformation, that could be an advantage for us because we can use it and ask the students to fact check the information given by ChatGPT. So they can put in the different prompts, they get the information from it, they can check whether it's accurate or inaccurate, and that's part of the learning process. And in the same way as we teach them, Wikipedia is a good resource, but anyone can edit Wikipedia. You've got to be a little bit careful about using it. You can't use it as an academic source. So the same way with ChatGPT, yes, it's a very useful tool, but you've got to be a bit careful. You've got to think about its answers. Don't just accept its answers. That will be part of the teaching process, I think, in schools and in university.
I'm going to engage
Annie?
Stephanie Barnes. Yes.
I want to request it because we all, as audience, now I've put the hat of the audience. We know that ChatGPT is good. We know it has its limitations. We would be very thankful if this league of experts help us understand what, you did it very fast. What are the main limitations? Because if we are aware of them, it will be easier to know how to address them. So A, what are the known limitations? B, if there are any symptoms or tools that can help us on what we can do in order to overcome. And of course, how to be aware of new opportunities and new limitations when times goes by, because as we know, every day is a new day, also with the software. So what was yesterday a problem may not be a problem today. So again,
Absolutely.
What are the main limitations? How do we address them? Explain them one by one. How do we address them? And how can we find new problems? How can we look for new problems and understand that past problems are already part of the past only?
I could go down a list of those, and they're out there, and I've read so much and I've seen so much, and they're all saying the same thing. But being able to address them right now, I'm not seeing that happening. I think that people are straddling, and that's the biggest conversation that's out there right now, how people are straddling between, again, like you said, the limitations and the benefits of this. So there are things like, again, the source. People are concerned about the sources of information, whether they're authoritative, whether they're valid. People are concerned about the augmentation of humans, that we need to have the last word. And some of the questions later on, people are worried about if this will replace man. Again, it's writing papers for students, and the teachers are concerned because they then have to put more work into validating what the work is they're putting out there. So there's so many avenues for this, and we've lumped it into just generative AI, and we call it AI. And sometimes we need to put a specific name to it and to say that it is run by an artificial engine so that we know the context and the purpose of the thing. But right now, I don't necessarily see that. And so if anybody else can add to that, it would be really great, because I'm putting out there what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing amongst the users, but I'm not seeing much of addressing that. I see more marketing of getting it out there, and all of a sudden you see all of these uses for it, and now I see about 100 tools that are out there as well. So which tool do you pick? So you're right, Moria, there are some valid issues, but the good thing about these types of conversations is that this is knowledge, and we're into knowledge. That's why I said, did we miss the boat? Knowledge is also awareness. So we must be aware of what's happening so that we can introduce them into the way we work or the way an organization executes. And I think that's where shortfall is. But I want to open it up to anyone else. And I wanted Stephanie Barnes to kind of jump in, because she's put a lot in the chat. And I was going to see if she shared her views on what's going on.
Sure. And it's not that I don't think, the AI it's a useful tool. It is. But I think, as we've just been saying, there's a lot of issues for it, and there's a lot of marketing hype around it. And that's what concerns me is people don't dig into it and realize the problems. They look at it. We've been taught for so long that technology is this great panacea. It's going to save us all. And yet it's, from the looks of it, from my perspective, and maybe I'm, a bit too pessimistic, although I don't like to think of myself as pessimistic, it's going to just drive us over the cliff far faster than we were already headed, with the misinformation, with the resources that are required, with the lack of thinking, and yeah, the lack of reflection on what this is doing to us as a society. No one's looking at the bigger picture. We're just, some more shiny technology to distract us from the fact that we're on fire.
Absolutely. And Bert, I'm gonna jump into another one. Bart, you have some perspective on that as well.
I can't hear you, Bart.
We can't hear you.
You're muted, Bart.
He's not muted. Something's wrong with his audio.
The headset.
I think it's all right now. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Sorry. So I think I'm sort of following Stephanie's remarks there. I think it's a wonderful tool. It's a great tool. It can do wonderful things. I've seen great applications of people using it. I would be very, well, maybe not scared, but maybe worried for using it to do the same thing that we used to do. So I think you will have to change your process and change the way you do your work. Otherwise, we might end up sending a lot of information, because now creating information that looks like it's been written by you or by a person is so much easier, that the idea of creating even more information than we already used to do is a very tempting thing to go on. I've seen people sort of spitting out articles on topics which are not really contributing a lot, but still claiming a lot of space on LinkedIn or on any of those kind of publication platforms, because it's so easy now to create that content. So I think because of the power of such a tool, one should use it very wisely to make sure that we do not overload ourselves, but try and see if we can unload ourselves to some extent. And I shared one approach in the chat. It's from Ethan Mollick. It's a, I think, university professor, if I'm right. At least he's teaching at a university, not sure if he's a professor. And he describes how he used ChatGPT in his course and asking his students, deliberately asking them to use it in answering his assignments. And he's also seeing the developments of students when they reflect on what ChatGPT is delivering them. I shared his link, and I think he also made a bit further publications on it. You can probably find it from his Substack that I shared in the chat.
Okay. Very good. I'm going to put out one big concern, and this is a concern of mine that I have with it too, because this is something that has been kind of growing. And I think, Omkar, you might be able to give a perspective on your background, but I'm going to read this. The potential for misuse and abuse can encode biases, racism, and deception. Results cannot detect bias, prejudice, and hatred in these chat boxes. And I think that's a really top concern of ethics that is out there. So what do you think about that? Because I know that even in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, that they have decided, or they made a decision that they would put out a directive to ban discriminatory algorithms. And, you know, when someone asked me, I said, well, how do you do that once you've institutionalized it within the organization? You've now taken an individual bias and you have made it part of the processes within your organization. So how do we now ban those? And this is heavily ladled with it's heavily got algorithms within it. And even in the past, Google, I think Google Tay went very racist very quickly based on what it was being trained to do. So I put that out there because that's a major concern of this type of technology.
Yep.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, Johnny, you can go first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The one thing I was going to say, because AI has evolved, right? One of the things that it has pushed out there in the marketplace is the need for an AI ethics audit, right? So you have AI auditors now, or it's moving in, just like we have KM audits. Now we're going to start having more AI ethic auditors to kind of, to your point, Annie, this stuff is out there. How do you then go back and analyze it to get rid of it? That's what the push is now. And I've seen where companies are looking for individuals with that background or have that type of knowledge so they can go and review the algorithm. So that's the point I want to make. But go ahead, Karen, go ahead.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like I'll give you an example and contextualize to the world of knowledge management, right? One of the worst sins what any knowledge management software can do is garbage in and garbage out, right? And imagine that garbage in is created by generative AI because it is getting trained. And when we are talking within the walls of an enterprise, when we deploy generative AI and you're having employees actually use that tool to create content which is unaudited, which is uncurated, which is unsupervised, and then the AI is kind of learning more and more onto it and then driving suggestions. That's a perfect recipe for disaster. One thing, and this comes from my background of building an AI tool for the last 2 years. These are great practices.
You're coming in and out for some reason.
Yeah, is it better now? Are you able to hear me well?
It is. It was going in and out. It's a little bit better now. It seems to be continuous.
Great. Yeah. So essentially, building like a generative AI tool for the last 2 years, in my limited expertise, we have realized that it is very difficult for the algorithms to unlearn. So if you bringing audit committees fairly late, it's gonna just mess up with the algorithm. So the moment you mess up with the algorithm by putting an audit control to it, it's going to get confused. And whatever limited capability or limited use that bot had, whichever was maybe kind of influenced by not the best prompts or inputs, will stop working completely. So having an audit is more of a corrective late approach, but according to my experience, it's not going to work. So when the prompts and when the AI is getting trained from day zero, especially within the enterprise, because knowledge contributes to the top line, it's important on day zero rather than on day 30 or day 60 or day 180.
Can you explain the audit control for those who didn't understand what you meant, please? If you can elaborate and explain in a few more sentences, please.
Yeah, so essentially, whenever we're writing an algorithm, the algorithm for private companies like ours, we like to make it open source for the customers who are buying it, or reveal the algorithm what buying it, right? Now, essentially, there might be some data points through the course of the AI learning, which it would capture for it to make it bias. And then the bias is the seeding ground for making certain unpleasant or absolute statements or not very accurate knowledge. An AI audit or an algorithm audit typically happens through the InfoSec departments of huge tech companies, which they actually evaluate every data point to see whether this data point is actually contributing A, to increase accuracy, and B, to reduce bias. And data point can be literally anything, right, from a SharePoint folder to the gender of the employee.
Thank you. I think people will better understand now. Annie, back to you.
Moria, now you're going in and out. I don't know what's happening with the audio. Can you repeat what you just
Can
said,
you hear
Moria?
me well? I wanted to pass
Currently.
it to you, but if you want, I would be loving to give a summary from what I understood, because we are KMers and we already know that it should be fighting us and we cannot take it for granted. But I'm looking on the business level, because many of our here come from the business, from the field, and not from the universities. So we could also ask on Google what try checking the reliability of the sources, but we didn't do it too much. We said, okay, 90+% seems okay, so let's go with it. And I think that most people now are feeling comfortable to use a source of ChatGPT, even though it is not 100% reliable. They also feel okay with it if they know that they will give the last word, and if they know that in some tasks it won't replace them. But I think that what you spoke about biases is very helpful for people. And what you spoke about tools can be very helpful for us KMers, because if we know and we can list the more typical biases, and Daniel Kahneman taught us something like 15 to 18 heuristics of biases, if we can prepare ourselves a list and check these, we will have a better way to check ChatGPT, seeing that it is not misleading us. I think that could be very helpful when we are speaking about augmentation, not just saying, let's have augmentation, but saying, okay, also ask ChatGPT, also ask an expert, take the results, combine them, and look for biases, because the expert will come with biases and the machine will come with even much more biases. That's one thing that I can take for tomorrow morning. The second thing that I can take is all the time to monitor and check what new tools there are in, because I believe that when we will have tools for running ChatGPT on our inside organization content, it will change the way we organize materials. It will change the way we search. It will change the collaboration between the different silos that we have today, because our small assistant will help us overcome problems that we struggled on doing. And I would have to be very happy to hear if you all have comments on these understandings and taking it to additional understandings.
I think one of the problem.
Oh, no, go ahead, Darren.
Sorry, let me just briefly say, I want to go back to what you said before as well, Moria, and what you've just said now. Before, you were asking, where is it wrong? Do we know where it underperforms? Do we know where it's unpredictable? I think part of the problem with ChatGPT at the moment is that it's unpredictably unpredictable. We don't know where it's wrong. It has a disclaimer that it's sometimes wrong. From an educational perspective, that's fine. We can check the citations. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. From a knowledge management perspective, I think it's much, much more problematic. Education, we can use it as a creative tool, mistakes and all, warts and all, that's fine. I think in knowledge management, we can't. So as you say, the only way it can be used at the moment is hand in hand with human intervention, which is fine. But it does seem to defeat a little bit the purpose of, not the purpose maybe, but it does seem to defeat a little bit what some people think this tool already is. I think it's unpredictably unpredictable. And for me, that's where the problem lies. In terms of a knowledge management and a business tool, I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tony,
go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add over here, I agree that that's the kind of status as of today. But as early adopters of this technology, I'm sure that a bunch of guys are right now in the Bay Area trying to crack this out, so that how can it start getting more predictable, right? Like if we look at the advancement, right, from ChatGPT 3 to 3.5 to 4, I think things have started getting way like significantly more predictable. I have a couple of friends who are starting their startups in Y Combinator, where they have created tools such as GPT Radar and OpenLeaks, right? And these are essentially startups which counter, and as fast as ChatGPT can generate knowledge, at that same very pace, they're able to detect 90%, 80%, 100% of whatever written is through generative AI. So it's a matter of having both those plugins, right? One for the good, which gives you angel wings, and one kind of the police who's actually checking and saying that, hey, you know what, this is generative AI generated, and handle with caution.
Absolutely. The one thing I keep going back to is something Annie mentioned about having that subject matter expert help doing the reinforcement learning of the tool, right? And that's particularly effective inside the organization. But when it's outside the organization, it's hard to have a subject matter expert on everything possible. But I think inside the wall, in corporations, that's where it's going to get its best benefit. And Moria mentioned is breaking down silos, and that is huge, because when folks understand that tool is taking knowledge from the organization to actually render decisions or help you as another quote unquote expert, more and more silos across the organization will start to break down. So they want to contribute to that knowledge of the chatbot. So it's that people centric piece, and that's me. I just want to make sure that people will incorporate that into this whole loop of this ChatGPT learning process, and that's going to happen within the organization. And I think it's super important, because I've even talked to a few high school teachers as well, and about using ChatGPT in the classroom, how should we approach it and things like that. You have to be intentional about explaining what it does well, what it doesn't do well, how you can use the tool to discern between fact and fiction, and as a more of a teaching tool to say, hey, check your resources, use this in a very yes, in a small focused way. It's like someone talked about Wikipedia, not that could be changed, and use that with caution. This should be the same type of disclaimer in the broader sense. So that's some of the things I really want to make sure we leave here with. That human in the loop is super important.
I think that, and here's jumping in again, but I think that generative AI is a very valuable tool, and I think it is very beneficial because it does take us to another state of having stuff faster so that we can make better decisions. But I want to throw a question out there. A lot of this we've already known. So even with building a house, we know that we must think about what we need in the future. So we will rough in a basement and maybe not complete it so that it is ready for us when we use it later. For some reason, it seems with technology, we rush to get it out there, and then we go back to remember the things that we should have thought about that we needed to have in the future. Most of these limitations have been existing since when it first kind of started. And think about it, like we've evolved, or even with this revolution, this has been for years, okay? So again, back with knowledge. If we have this knowledge and we need to have those experts there, we need humans to augment it, and they have specific areas of expertise, then why don't we engage them earlier? Every company now has a DEI area simply because they've known what has happened. And with data science, they also knew about these algorithms. But yet, when we put things out, we're recircling back again to make certain that those things that we should have looked at for future success, we left out. So I want to put that out there and see what you think about that.
Annie, explain to those who are not familiar what's DEI, please.
DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's to make certain that you uncover those biases before you actually move forward so that things are, disparities are removed.
Yeah,
So,
many
go ahead.
times DE&I is a second thought. I mean, it's not in the forefront of the organizations, and that's the issue. It's all about generating revenue. That's why they push stuff out before a lot of stuff is actually vetted in a way that makes it more palatable for a larger audience. It's like Amkar, he's in the forefront of a lot of this with his organization, and he's taken the time to really, discern a lot of this. Even when he talked about his colleagues, building startups that would kind of, look into these sort of things. So that's the gap. That's the huge gap. Most organizations do not take the time to do that, and that's the problem, because they're pushing things out to generate revenue. So it's until we can get folks to stop thinking about profits and thinking about effectiveness before they push out a tool, we're going to continue to have these problems.
Annie, I want to address something that two people spoke about, but we didn't use the wording yet. So maybe we'll shed light on it. Bart and Eric, Professor Eric too, showed us, demonstrated some articles, papers that are speaking about how to use it. And I think that what we saw there is critical thinking. And aside of having maybe a checklist of biases and aside of knowing, please check your resources, maybe we should speak about deliberately developing our critical thinking techniques and abilities, not only our knowledge, but also our ability. And if we do so, we will be in a better place when using and utilizing ChatGPT.
Absolutely, because then we get out of the stovepipes of just staring straight forward. We actually look at the boundaries. The interesting thing about this is my strong background is systems engineering, and that's something that is ingrained in me, that you don't just look at the straight and narrow, that you have to look at the boundaries and also test the boundaries to make certain that something is successful, efficient, and effective. But let's look at this at let's think about some of the uses so that we can see the value of generative AI. We've talked about a lot of the limitations and we've talked about what we want to see, but anyone want to share the values that we can get out of it, the benefits? So I'd like to open the floor for that so that we get a good idea of why this is such a good evolution or revolution toward utilizing artificial intelligence within our businesses and eventually within our homes, once it moves out into the communities. Anyone have any good uses, any measures or metrics that demonstrate the success?
Well, I know I don't have any metrics and things like that in front of me, but what I was saying before about how Microsoft plans to use it, I think from a productivity standpoint, that's the good part of it. The general public, I think Amkar mentioned. I mean, he nailed it when he said it went from 3 to 3.5 to 4. It's continually evolving, and so the problems we have now may not be the problems we have in the future. So, it's. I don't know what other use cases are out there. Maybe someone else can jump in on that one.
So
well, I'll say
we have some people, Annie. We have some people on the chat with some examples of usage. So maybe we enable Bart and Susan to speak.
Yes, absolutely, Bart. Susan? Where you at? Bart, are you talking?
I know Manfred had a question too. He had his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to fill in. We did a survey recently on this knowledge management global on the situation, and we got a couple hundred feedbacks. And I did the first analysis, the categorization of the quality inputs, like the text inputs, on the traditional part of it during February, and then I just gave it a try and did it with ChatGPT. You know, I could do it within 2 hours, what took me 3 days before. So it's really speeding up, and this is an experience I could share, you know, but as we had in the chat already, sometimes it was cheating. Like, for example, I was asking what are external sources of this data set I give you, please structure it. And then came some chemical plant catastrophe, you know. This was not part of the data, which I knew only before because I read it before, you know. So sometimes it's making up and you have to be very careful, but it's a wonderful, wonderful tool for me.
Oh, excellent. Susan?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to contribute. So I work in academia. I'm a librarian. So this has been a topic of concern for many my colleagues here. And I think one thing that I've noticed that students are able to kind of use ChatGPT in their own work is just to get an idea of how to think about something in a different way. Kind of like, I mean, I think we talked a little bit earlier about Wikipedia and when that started and the concern about how that would contribute or inhibit student learning. But I think it's a first stop for a lot of students just to get an idea of a topic. And I think ChatGPT kind of serves that same role in just getting them thinking about how to consider a topic, structure and a response, think of something that they may have not considered previously and how to weave that into their own learning. So that was when I mentioned that in the chat, that was the first thing I thought about was I can actually expand your knowledge to a certain degree because it's of something you may have not thought about initially.
Excellent. And I don't want to mess up a name, but Ankit, A-N-K-I-T.
Bart also wanted to add that later on.
Hmm?
Bart wanted to speak also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's. Shall I just a quick example? I put it in the chat as well. One example that I learned about from a gardener, landscaper who had his own business, who was a dyslexic, so he couldn't really write emails or text messages very well. So he was writing a lot of errors and therefore causing a lot of very disturbed customer contact. He uses now ChatGPT to sort of, he puts in like some with a lot of typos, but just like the information, like an address and a time and so on. And then with ChatGPT, actually a friend of him, he wrote a nice script to make that into a nice message, which just opens like, dear Mrs. Such and so, thanks a lot for your confidence in our company. We will be showing up to do this and that at that location at this time. And please, if you need any more information, feel free to reach out and so on. So from this sort of mess of little information with a little script, you can make a nice prompt. So the core, of course, is in making the good prompt, which has, of course, the right basic information in there, but is resistant to sort of solving the typos and sort of crafting a nice and well-written email. And that really sort of bumped up his customer contact because it was a lot more first-time right contact with his customers, and they felt a lot more engaged in his announcements and his customer touch points. And I think those kind of applications, I think this is a very small one, just one person really changing his life with a very simple application. I think that's extremely powerful, and also extremely powerful if you can put that in your personal life or your education or in your business, whatever you do.
Okay, great. I'm going to go in three orders. I want Ankit, who was going to speak previously, and then Dor has his hand up, and then and then we'll move on to some questions with the panel again. There's one other one, author, that I want to put, so in that order. So Ankit, could you go ahead and speak, and then Dor, it'll be you, and then author, okay?
All right, thank you so much. So great discussion, first of all, and just continuing with respect to the person who just spoke prior to this, I have been looking at something very similar. So I'm based out of India, and I'm associated with an organization that does a lot of work with rural communities in like, deep, like embedded deep, really deep within India where most people don't reach. And one of the things that I was thinking is that when they need to apply or speak to the government, very often they need to write letters, in the local language or in English, and maybe Chat GPT along with, an audio to like Whisper can facilitate that, and the only reason I was sort of holding that back is because of, the conversation that you guys were having earlier in terms of is Chat GPT correct? Because it's like, if I have Chat GPT create a letter for me in Russian, I really can't vet it, right? So unless I know that's 100% correct, that's a huge challenge. But that is one major area where I think it's going to make, it could actually transform the lives of many people, right? And the other part where I was talking about, which is, impacting me immediately, is with respect to, like, for example, like, well, when running my startup or planning something, on the one hand, you have the business plan. We've all seen those videos online. But I took it a step ahead where I was trying to animate the logo for my company and, make it new every day. And that's where something like creating the prompts through generative AI and then the images and all started helping. And normally an animator would be a heavy cost to a startup. So everywhere you can cut costs at that point of time makes a huge difference. And very often you don't really even know what you need, right? Like, for example, like I had someone who wanted a low latency CPP coder, but he did not have the exact job description. So he just asked ChatGPT for it. So those are sort of things where I feel that this is something that I am seeing. Personally, I think there's a lot more, but this is something that I am seeing firsthand.
Okay, thank you, Ankit. Draw.
So just to augment what Ankit said, I've been playing around with ChatGPT in the last couple of months. And a couple of weeks back, I learned that I'm a in training prompt engineer. So this is kind of an emerging capability of being able to tell the AI what to do for you. It goes way beyond ChatGPT. I think the visuals in our company, we hired a consultant company to brand and create an image for our branding. And one of the guys who is not a designer actually gave one of the tools of generative AI prompts about how we want to position ourselves, and it created posters at par to the consulting company that we ended up not taking. So there are real, first of all, this is part of the reasons I think it is a revolution and not just an evolution, because my brother-in-law is a professional ophthalmologist. He's an eye doctor, and he asked ChatGPT to write a research proposal, and ChatGPT wrote it for him. And then he said, but this you compare it to a placebo, and you want to compare it to a different medicine. And it kind of rewrote it to be according. And he said, I should have had a research assistant work for me for 2 weeks to do what we just did after dinner on Friday night. So it is endless capabilities. What was mentioned about in technology, writing code, or even harder, understanding code. If somebody is maintaining legacy code of an information system, and you ask GPT, please explain this snippet of code, it will write documentation of existing working code and explain to the programmer what he's seeing, okay? This is taking us, in leaps forward in reading, but also in writing. I asked GPT, write a code in this language that does that, and it just did it for me, okay? So of course you still need the prompt engineer. You still need the person who can feed in a design that comes into workable, compilable Java code or .NET code, or you have .NET code and you want to migrate it to Java. It will do that for you, and that is nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. So we didn't speak, in my opinion, enough in the discipline of knowledge management. So I think there, bringing it into the organization, dealing with proprietary information of the organization that you don't want up there, and teaching it to be generative, and instead of organizing and tagging and putting in structures and searching for a certain material or having the bot follow certain paths. Now the generative AI, it actually answers a new answer that wasn't there before. So it creates something new that wasn't there, which is kind of a next leap also in knowledge management, in my opinion.
Thank you. And Arthur, let's get that one. And then I want to go back to the panel with a couple of questions. Are you still here? Or okay, let's move forward to the panel. I want to we see the good and the bad of this technology, but there are some things that are happening. You know, I talked about, it actually was Microsoft. I talked about Tay, that they had to take that one down, but we've come so far. But in the current times, I have a couple of things. A Google engineer was fired for declaring the company's generative AI app language models for dialogue application was sentiment. You know, it's able to perceive and feel things. So they got fired for that one, and feeling like it was fraudulent information. Microsoft and ChatGPT is suspect in their early implementations because of inaccurate results and erratic behavior, which we've heard some of that. Google had a significant loss in stock price following Bard's rush debut after the language model incorrectly said the Webb telescope was the first to discover a planet in a foreign solar system. So these are some of the things that are happening that are causing distrust in people. And, you know, it used to be that we would say, you know, when you come out wrong and that first wrong, it'll kill something. Okay. I don't know that that'll happen here, but what do you think the future of generative AI is? Are we turning that around? How are we moving forward? And I'm going to start out with Adam and go through the panel.
Yeah, I think in the chat, someone they talked about it's like a pendulum, and we've gone quite a way to one side. I think it will come back. There's a lot of hype about it at the moment, and everyone's using it. But now we are finding out about the limitations. We are finding out, okay, well, it can do all of this, but it can't do that. So I see the hype reducing somewhat in the coming months, but it will get better, but it will get more uses. I think we are overhyping it. We should not be so concerned about it, but it has got some good uses. Yeah. So the future, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go to Omkar.
Yeah, let me add to my idea of future of generative AI, and I like saying generative AI and not ChatGPT because, you know, ChatGPT is the evangelist, but generative AI is the underlying tech, right? Yeah, free ChatGPT promotion over here as well. So, no, what I'm trying to say over here is that the future within the domain of knowledge management, because that's the domain we all belong to, you know. I've already started seeing this, and in fact, to a certain extent, we ourselves started deploying, generative AI properties which get trained on large models. I'll give you an example. Let's say one of my customer, one of South Asia's biggest bank, they wanted a generative AI to be fed in for their 30,000 employees because they wanted knowledge on demand. And they told us that, hey, Omkar, we want to make sure that this knowledge is accurate. So what did we end up doing? We ended up understanding the ChatGPT model. We understood fairly well a couple of generative AI models, trained the entire model on the entire banking data nodes across, and those were about 800 million odd nodes. It took about 3 months for us to go ahead and train, and then we get those large models very small to the context of that particular bank. So now the accuracy of the questions, what 30,000 employees are asking, it's as if I'm talking to a ChatGPT, but which has been contextualized to the walls of my organization. Now, when we are talking about this, we did it for banks. There are thousands of other companies just like us who are taking these large models and kind of contextualizing it for industry, and within industry to a sub-industry, and to a sub-industry to a company. So what we're going to be like the future of generative AI is a super productive workforce. And that's where there might be a slight disagreement with Adam, because I would really like to overhype it because the productivity it can unlock, because, given an example of this 30,000 employee bank, they are able to close deals faster, service customer support, 5x, 6x better, just because of a simple chatbot which we were able to include or index between them. So long story short, the future for me for ChatGPT or generative AI is within knowledge management is if we are able to contextualize those models and train it within industry, sub-industry, and then to a company, we are just unlocking a 5x or a 10x productive workforce. Of course, and as Anthony also said, that if it is curated by subject matter experts, that kind of models, it's the cherry on the cake.
Good. Anthony?
Absolutely. I'm in the same camp that Omkar is talking about, because there are generative AI applications in specific domains, like in the legal space. They're becoming more research in that area for legal organizations because of all the research they do, case research and things of that nature. So I agree 100%. That's where it's going. Microsoft has already proved that. They've already started to move that forward in their tools. And so that's, that productivity jump and that instant delivery of knowledge is going to be fantastic. And what I think Omkar is kind of short selling a little bit. It's not a simple chat bot, because all the work they've done to put that together, right? It's a lot of work, to take that 30,000 employees and all those data points. But once that work is done, and the outcomes and productivity levels, it's going to be outstanding. So that's exactly where I see it's going.
Excellent.
And these, sorry, just to add, these models are dynamic. So every time an employee is asking a question, it's actually training the model. So it's getting better by every question. So it's just getting smarter.
Excellent. Darren?
I think two positives I'm going to share that both relate to productivity has been mentioned before. They've been kind of covered, but it's two areas that excite me. One is the graphical capabilities of the design tools. If you look at the improvements when we started with when I started in being aware of Stable Diffusion a few months ago, and seeing the latest iteration of Midjourney, where the quality of the output from Midjourney now at the moment is absolutely fantastic. And we had a workshop the other day with students, and they were asked to share what they do. We had design students and fashion students saying that they're using Midjourney to help develop ideas as a brainstorming, as a creative tool. So their productivity has increased dramatically with these types of tools, the design AI that generate images. The second productivity increase, I think, is with coding, which has been covered before. But I've got two colleagues who are programmers, and they use ChatGPT as a coding buddy. It's not replacing them, they're working with it. It's speeding up what they do. They're still at the level where they're checking the code because they feel it needs to be checked, but it's really speeding up their workflow. So those are the two productivity increases that I've heard about recently from people who've used them. I think the note of caution is the kind of Wild West attitude, maybe, which is understandable, of companies like OpenAI, which are out to make a buck. I think there are going to be more controls put on it. Elon Musk and a group of 1,000 technologists yesterday calling for a 6-month moratorium, that ChatGPT-4 should now be held. We shouldn't develop any more. I don't know if anyone's going to listen to what they have to say about it, but the EU are actually the UK and the EU are talking about putting specific ethical controls at the same time as the big technology companies are getting rid of ethics departments in AI. Well, not getting rid of, but cutting back. So I think there's a note of caution as well, but I'm there with the productivity increases. I think these are phenomenal tools.
Excellent, excellent. And you know what? This ends on a note where even Prashal had just said, if it's speeding up their work, that means some of them won't be needed in the future, therefore risking their job already, which is the last questions that I'm going to ask the panel, which is basically, do you think it's going to replace jobs? And then subsequently, do you think as it improves and gets optimized, if it will replace man? So I'd like you to take a minute to kind of give your insight on that, okay? So let's start, and I'll go backwards this time. I'll start with Darren.
It's definitely going to replace tasks, that's for sure. It's going to replace mundane, repetitive tasks. It's going to replace certain manipulative tasks. So I think that goes without saying, it's going to replace tasks. Is it going to replace actual jobs? Goldman Sachs did a report yesterday or 2 days ago where they say, yeah, it's going to replace a whole chunk of white collar professional jobs and a load of jobs that work within information technology. So that's what they're predicting. That I don't know. It will replace tasks for sure. And I suppose it's inevitable that some jobs will be replaced. I can't see how this is not going to happen. Productivity is a double-edged sword, isn't it? I think it's interesting that they're talking about white collar jobs being the victim this time rather than the blue collar jobs. Will it replace man? I'm a little bit down on OpenAI because they did an experiment the other day when they were, well, not the other day, when they were testing GPT-4, they did an experiment to see what ChatGPT would do if it was given resources and things like that. And it didn't do, under the controlled environment that they have, GPT didn't attempt to wipe out mankind. But it was bizarre. It was given certain capabilities and certain access, and it was given money. And ChatGPT did employ a knowledge worker via one of these gig economy and did try and employ this person to crack captures for it. And when the worker said, are you a robot? ChatGPT lied and said, no, I'm not a robot. And the worker then started cracking the captures for ChatGPT. So they actually got it to employ. So as I say, in a semi-controlled experiment, they tested ChatGPT and got it to actually employ someone and spend money that it was given. But it didn't try and replace mankind or wipe anybody out. So I hope not.
Okay. All right. So let's come back to Anthony. A minute.
I agree with Darren about the task. There will be some jobs like content writer and some of those types of jobs may be eliminated. But at the end of the day, you still need that subject matter expert to be in that loop, as Darren's example shows. Even ChatGPT say, "Hey, I need some help," so it goes out and gets the right person, because at the end of the day, it's still learning too. And until these applications become self-aware, I don't think we have any danger of being replaced. But it's going to be. I think the future is going to be, another expert, another somebody to bounce things off of. I mean, that's what the technology is going to end up doing. It's going to, aid in the productivity. It's going to replace some jobs, replace some tasks, like Darren says. This is going to be another expert that we consult with. That's what I feel.
Okay, and Omkar.
Yeah, I think I'm completely on board with replacing tasks. Yes, replacing jobs, definitely. I think we need to come out of the kind of thin line what we believe that, hey, you know what, this is going to be a great sidekick for me to do my job better. Yes, as of now, 3 months down the line, no. Content writer's job have evaporated overnight. If we look at Midjourney, that Darren mentioned about Midjourney V5. Bye-bye logo makers. You don't need logo makers anymore, as long as you're able to go ahead and give good prompts. But having said that, a new generation of jobs are going to be arising. I really think, like my 14-year-old nephew keeps on talking about, I'm going to be an AI prompt engineer. And I'm like, tell me more about it. And he's like, I will go ahead and write some really, really, in his terms, kick-ass prompts, which can help the AI generate the answer faster than you. So I'm like, okay, interesting. So yeah, jobs are going to go. The cannon fodder is essentially logo artists and content writers, and it's the survival of the most creative right now.
Okay, Adam.
I like that, kick-ass prompts. That's a good job.
Yeah, I'm learning some new job titles here. Yeah, so yes, some jobs will go, but I can't remember what Darren said his job was, but there's like in education a fairly new job is sorry, I've lost it now. Instructional designer. It's only been around 10-15 years, so new jobs are happening all the time. We've got ethics auditor. and as you said, a prompt generator, prompt engineer. So there'll be new jobs. I know I teach university undergraduates, and we've got design students, business students, engineers, computer students. They're using GPT now, but they're a little bit concerned. I tell them, don't be concerned, because there will be jobs out there. There'll be different jobs, but you've got a university education, you've got your brain, you can think. That's the main thing that people employ you for, not what you're learning at university. You're employed for their thinking skills, and so don't worry too much. There will be jobs, I think. So I'm positive in that aspect.
Excellent. You know, last but now I'm gonna turn it over to Moria so she can kind of close us out. But last word on that. You know, it's interesting because even with knowledge management, there were new jobs that came up and there were jobs that were displaced. And I think sometimes we need to align ourselves to know how we're inserting this into how we're doing work so we can see the different ways that we're working. So therefore, people can be trained. You know, we lost valuable librarians who could have been digital librarians who had all the knowledge to do that, but it was because we changed the media, but we didn't change the discipline. And so I think that we're definitely going to have new tasks, but we're also going to have displaced jobs that can be retrained to go into digital jobs. And then we're going to have a lot of new jobs because things have always happened that way. And we need to be ready to prepare people and to actually get them into the position so that they can fit into those processes and we can have continuity in our work. So that's kind of my last statement on that one. And I'm going to turn it over to Moria. I want to thank you all for coming. This has been a great conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to thank each of the panel members for contributing toward this. Moria, it's yours.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all the experts on the panel. Thank you, Annie, for leading it. And thank you very much, Art and Vincent, for being behind the scenes and doing so much to help us this happen. I want to say that after I hear all the ideas, and we started very negatively with the pessimism, I listed here something like 15 different tasks that will turn the way we work. As things you said, I can share that I every day use ChatGPT in an additional way to the day before, not only generating in the classic way, but it was my colleague, and together we wrote the last month a new a glossary of knowledge management. It is my teammate, and together we write professional marketing materials. It is my assistant, and together we English proof my messages, because Bart, I'm not an English native speaker, etc., etc. And every day it helps me in an additional way, and I'm very excited again and again. But I want to go back and take this all to a higher level, because at the end of the day, we're speaking about preparing ourselves and getting ready. But as the change, we don't know even how to prepare ourselves or what to do. So probably what we have to do is we have to change the way we work in general. We have to develop our abilities of creative thinking, of critical thinking, of digital orientation, of learning orientation, adaptivity, and last but not least, the way we collaborate and work together. All of these will give us an edge, not only in using technology better and being ahead of all our colleagues, but also in doing better than the technology, because the augmentation and the next step we can add with all of these 6 abilities I spoke about will definitely take us to new horizons. So thank you all. And on the chat, you can find the link in order to register to our next roundtable session on NFL, blockchain, of course, in the perspective of knowledge management. Thank you for being everyone with us here today, and have a great morning, great afternoon, great night, good day to you all, wherever you are.
Thank you, Moria. And good day to everyone. Yeah, the claps.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Annie.
Okay, thank you.
Fascinating. Everyone, Daryl, Tony, and Adam, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Have a
Great
day, everyone.
conversation.
Great conversation. Take care.
Just love technology.
Yeah, we're moving into the future.
Yes, yes,
But we got to
ma'am.
be the thought leaders for it. We gotta change the dynamics too, so that it's all positive.
That's part of being adaptable. What if the
Yes,
sixth?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
absolutely, absolutely. But this was very good.